All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here with the next two elements in our Tears of the Planet full set review. Uh, I'm here, as always, with the one, the only, Travis Rudros. How are you doing, bud?
Mr. Ghoul, thank you for having me on. It is always fun to talk about brand new cards and speculate whether they're amazing or terrible, and then to found out you were totally wrong, or maybe totally right.
It's fun going back, especially. I like these not even for other people as much. It's fun to go back later and see what I said about cards. Like, I had fun today.
Hmm.
I was like, what did I say about Refia back in the day? Like, how wrong
Yeah,
was I?
right.
It's funny listening to that because I was so wrong on that card because I felt so burned by the Ferris in Opus 18 and how that card just
Yeah.
never felt very good to play. Whew, that was a bit
Sometimes
of
you
a
just need that one extra card to tip it over, huh?
yeah, a little bit of a swing and a miss by me there, but so we're going into my two favorite elements to play, which are wind and earth. I love my wind and my earth decks, especially when I can play both of them together.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
As far as what I want to see from these sets now, I still want to see a direction for wind that feels good, that isn't necessarily storm. Like that's you know it could be a storm related thing. I just like the cast slurry I feel is so solved at this point.
Yeah.
It changes maybe 3 cards over the course of every 2 sets. Like I want to see something new and something exciting there. And Earth is interesting because it's like I feel like Earth tends to have like either really boring cards or really fun cards, like no in between. It feels like.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just like power buffs are so unexciting, and it feels like Earth is just always big bodies, big man hit hard. But like we'll see. We'll see as we go through. But I always I always like talking a little bit like what I want to see from elements before we get into them. So that way we can kind of evaluate the
Yeah.
elements like under the impression of like what does this element really need to succeed.
Yeah.
So let's start
Well,
off with wind here, and we have the first wind legend. It's one of the first cards spoiled for the set. This is Aerith. Uh, First of all, card is gorgeous. Like I cannot wait to see this card like actually in foil and everything, like with the proper like signature shimmer and all that. Ah,
mhm.
it's gonna be incredible. Card itself is interesting. So when she enters the field, you choose a character opponent controls. As long as Aerith is on the field, that character loses all of its abilities. Um, and then when Aerith's put from the field in the break zone, you can remove her from the game. When you do so, you draw a card. So she kind of like cantrips when she dies. Both of these effects are like I would say fine. Like in a vacuum, she is free. She forces your opponent to hopefully want to deal with her, as opposed to maybe something like a threat you have. Maybe you have a Rosa or a Noctis or something, and they have to get the Aerith off the field because, assumedly, the character you're suppressing is a card that's important to what your opponent's doing. Um,
Right.
and I think there are like pretty clear, decent targets to hit with this in a lot of matchups. I think that like hitting Lena in any deck that's playing that seems really, really good. I don't think any deck is playing it, but it's really funny if they have like a Cosmos and a Light character, and you just suppress the Cosmos, and now both of
Yeah.
them break and die. Um, like a Tyvis, it's a way of kind of dealing with Tyvis without getting it off the field and letting them get the value off of the Tyvis for
Hmm.
at least a little bit. And she's so cheap that it's like even if they say okay, well I'm going to bring Hilda her and kill her, you don't even feel that bad because she even draws you the card, right?
Right.
The one thing about her is how much do I want to take up a deck spot with her? Um, and there's a lot of weird nombos with this card that kind of scare me. The fact she has to remove herself from the game is annoying because I think it would be really fun to be looping her with Zac, like Zac attack, revive Aerith, suppress
Hmm.
that. Now I want that ability, so I'm going to kill the Aerith. The Aerith goes to the break zone, or revive Aerith, suppress it again, and like you have this like really obnoxious loop. But they wanted to stop you from doing the loop for whatever reason. I don't think that even sounds broken, but like, and then I think like, well, it's kind of a cool interruption if you like Lena her back in during your opponent's turn. In any situation where I could Lena this in, I feel like I'd rather Lena in Mishtola.
Yeah.
Like that's like the big sticking point is like if we're not making room in a lot of decks for Opus 5 Ishtola, are we making room for this card?
I just don't see it. Like it's one of those again weird cards that there's no line of text on it that's bad. It's just where do you put it? And deck slots are pretty crucial in FF, especially since they only decks can only run 50 cards. And I love that it picks a character, so you could just blank a monster or a backup. That's probably not going to be as relevant as a forward, but it could be. She's just such a tiny body, though. Like I don't know if 5,000 would have even made a difference, but 4,000 just feels so small. So neat card. I like that it feels different. I like that at least it's cheap and that it is effective when it comes down. But yeah, what are you cutting for this? What deck is this going in?
There's a card we'll get to later that might be the reason to play her. We'll get to that in a little bit, but up next we have King. King is a class 0 cadet or 5 cost 9k. When he enters the field, choose a forward opponent controls, return it to its owner's hand. If you control 5 more class 0 cadets, put it at the bottom of its owner's deck instead. We're starting to get a little bit more of this, where Wind historically has always been self bounce your own stuff, bounce your own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and now between Garuda, which could not bounce your own stuff, or the Tidus starter from Opus 21, we're seeing Wind start to kind of expand that region of what it's allowed to do for its removal suite, which I think is actually really good. Like I'm excited to see where they go with this in the future. King, not like the most exciting. Like if he had a burst, I could see it. Like without a burst, like 5 CP for the removal, like I almost feel like even in a cadet stack, wouldn't you almost rather play like a Garuda or something? I feel like and just pop 2 things, get the hasty body and all of that instead. It's just so expensive, and Garuda doesn't. Garuda's free. Like this isn't free, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's oddly boring, like how straightforward the effect is, and you don't want to just bounce it to hand. That's usually a death sentence in Final Fantasy, is just letting them replay whatever their broken card is. So you want to put it on the bottom. If you have 5 backups, he's good, but I mean, what if you draw this guy early? Like, yeah, I don't know. It's not that he's bad, but also cards like this make me wonder if they really understand cadets because I don't think removal was really something they ever had an issue with. Like I feel like plenty of cadet cards had removal. So again, I don't want to be too harsh on him because it's not like he does anything wrong, and at least he's a 9K, won't get a modded. But yeah, I don't know. He feels very just plain and underwhelming to me too.
If they like tacked on like attacks, it's just like the big thing to me is there's a card in Water this set that just says choose a forward, return it to its owner's hand. If you do this other thing, put it in the break zone instead. That
Yeah,
card costs 2.
yeah,
The only advantage here is maybe it's easier to get that second effect off if you have like backups and stuff, but it's not 3 CP better, like for sure.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and that's something I think they kind of struggle with in general is that making removal too expensive. Yeah, you get a big body, but if the forward they played was free or 1 or 2, it's not really worth it for you to spend 5 to get rid of that.
yeah. I don't think it's not terrible. Like I could see you even running a copy of it, like in a Wind Lightning deck or something, if you have like the space. But I do almost like think the previous, like the Hero King, is not that bad either. Like the 1 CP,
Yeah, the one that can break it. Yeah.
like it becomes 1 CP, which can help with your character count stuff, and then like you can turn a card in hand and do an Odin when he attacks. Like that seems like kind of decent, especially now that we can give haste to it more easily. But like again, it's not like a strictly bad card. It's just not an exciting
Yeah.
one. But if we are talking exciting on Class 0 cadets, this is probably the reason to consider Class 0 cadets in Wind. So this is Queen, who's had a lot of cards lately, and a lot of cards that really haven't done very much.
Yeah.
Queen is a 3 CP 7K. Choose 2 Class 0 cadet backups, activate them, and for Wind in 1, choose 2 cards your opponent's break zone and remove them from the game. So there's a lot to kind of unpack here. Activating 2 cadet backups is a really good effect. We'll talk them in Lightning earlier, but like we obviously have the Tray from Opus 21. You have stuff like 7. You probably could run like a Deuce or a Rem if you wanted to. Like it's very easy to get 2 Class 0 cadet backups. At which point Queen becomes 1 CP, and if they
Yeah.
don't deal with her, she is going to make that cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right? And like continue to refund value and like really give Class 0 cadets this advantage engine that I feel like the archetype has been missing alongside like Queen and Ace. Queen gives you CP advantage, Ace gives you card advantage. That's like everything you
Yeah.
could ever want in a card game. And even this second effect is like if you want to cast Kusith, you could just kind of discard a win card to cancel the Kusith almost, right? Or like any effect like that. Like this really cheap ability, and like even if you don't even necessarily want to pay that to cancel their effects, this is so debilitating. Your opponent almost can't interact with the break zone, and there's no once per turn on this either. Like
Yeah.
you can like if you kind of pass, you have a bunch of empty CP, and you're just like, well, I've got 4 CP. I might as well spend 2 of this, remove stuff in their break zone, and then and kind of hit them their long game that way. I think it's a really really powerful card. Kind of simple at the same time. Like it's a very elegant design, I think, for.
Yeah, given how wonky previous queens have been, a lot of them have just like really weird stipulations and a lot of conditions. This one's just so straightforward, which is a welcome change. So she essentially kind of like pays for herself. So you pay her for 3, tap your 3 backups, you get 2 of them back, and then you can use those very 2 to immediately use her effect, which is nice. And then, like you said, even though she's not like a threat in the sense that she's just a 7K body and she's not removing anything, they kind of want to get rid of her because she is just going to make all your next cadets, cheaper, quote unquote. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by how straightforward this was. I was kind of like reading the card over and over, like, well, wait, I'm missing something, right? Where's the part where you have to like throw out half your deck, or you have to, give your opponent your firstborn or something like that?
Yeah, it's a welcome change. So fingers crossed. I think if cadets are in wind, I think Queen is probably one of the biggest reasons why for sure.
Yeah.
We have Gubue, who, if you haven't seen the global Discord, is obsessed with this card. Um, so he's a big old goof. 2 CP, discard a wind card, choose a forward, can't be chosen by abilities. Pay wind, choose a forward, can't be chosen by summons. So my immediate impression is this card is not unplayable. It's not the worst card they've ever printed.
Hmm.
I do think it is expensive. So
Yeah.
for this card to be good, there has to be a wind card that, by existing and sitting on the field, it says, I win the game. And I think the most recent example of that was like Yuffie in the past. Like maybe Yuffie, you have this.
Yeah.
And like now you have a repeatable way of protecting Yuffie until you get to your combat phase where she can safely attack and kind of do that. In that situation, your opponent can't really attack over the Yuffie. The ability to give Yuffie first strike with like the backup. Like that's like the main thing I can think of. I don't think that's enough to make Kabui playable, but like it does make it kind of one of those cards to keep in the back of your mind, like in Saganashi, as like a card that theoretically could do something in the future. I just don't really think that future is now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Yuffie. Another card I thought of, if this had come out, 10 sets ago, Bismarck was super strong and
Oh
popular
yeah,
there. And it would have been worth it not only to protect his Bismarck, but Bismarck would give you cards back, so he would kind of help feed into the Gubu's design. So he's a neat card. Just, God, modern Windex are so efficient and they're so tight on slots. Like, you got to be breaking the mold to want to get a slot in those.
yeah. It's definitely like it's one of those cards that like I said, you'd have to find a value engine like on the level of Bismarck or Yuffie that
Yeah,
doesn't kill you to get it into play, which is the problem with Bismarck.
yeah,
Cater, uh, really simple card. Cadet 5K. She enters the field. If you have 2 cadets, draw a card that also has a burst. I mean, do I need to say much? It's like Elza to this day is one of the better Sky Pirates, and she has this exact line of text.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I imagine that like if you play like a Wind Lightning Cadets deck, this is a 3 of in it, like very easily.
Mm-hmm. EX burst. I think the only reason you would ever even not consider this is if, let's say, you're doing the tricolor or whatever, and you just want to have that extra fire cadet backup. So then you're still playing the old Opus 3 one just to fit that archetype. But I don't know if you even want that, and if you don't, definitely you're going with this cater.
The multi element one isn't terrible either if you really need to color fix for
Yeah,
water
that
and
one's okay.
for fire and wind. Like she's either less than free if you cast her, or what's the other mode? It's like you can do 5K damage if you have 5 backups.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
think
like
it's damage on backups.
it's not like a world breaker or anything, but like, and this isn't either. But like, it's nice to have the option. She just seems like a pretty decent card. I love bursts are always useful. Even one that's got a little bit of a you gotta have some setup before she actually does anything.
Yeah.
Chocobo Chick, Cat 7. So has the same thing as all the other summons this set. But it also deals 2,000 damage to all the forward opponent controls, then play a forward of 2 or less from your hand onto the field. So this is a Wind Phoenix. It's a little bit cheaper, but as opposed to Phoenix, which plays from Break Zone, this plays from hand. I mean, like, I don't really see what the forward you're supposed to do with this is. People are going to say Fire Winds Zidane, Fire Winds Zidane. I'm like, well, in that situation. You are either paying 3 CP plus a card in hand to not change the number of cards in your opponent's hand or meaningfully impact what they're doing. They draw afterwards. That is not good enough. Sorry, like not developing in a permanent body next to that or a backup like Edgar and just cheating Fire Winds Zidane. If that was good enough, every single Tyvus deck would be on 3 copies of Phoenix to cheat Zidane into play, and they aren't.
Yeah.
So, what is this meant to, like, you could deploy Aerith and suppress something, but again, like, that's, we have ways of doing that, and I don't think that that's particularly good. You have to line it up in hand. The small cleave, like, does that really matter? Like if you deploy, like, a first striker, it could maybe block up, but, like, what's a first striking 2-cost forward that, like, is good enough to be in your deck and that you're happy to play with this?
Yeah.
I could maybe see it if, like, they ever print, I want them to do it someday, a vanilla Yuna named Wind backup. And then you could pair this with Valifor, the starter Valifor, which is still a really strong card, but like you have to like play Wind Water, and Wind Water hasn't really been a great synergistic pair in a long time. But like if that ever happened, I could maybe see a world for Chocobo Chick, but I think until then it just reads like a worse Phoenix to me.
Yeah, the only card that I even thought of when you said it was Luso, but Luso's already cheap enough, and again, the Luso summon package is already so set and so tight, and you don't want to pay the cost in this. Like, if you're in Wind, your backups are your life. Like, you do not want to give up a backup unless you can, like, meaningfully replace it. So, yeah, I just don't see where this goes.
I've heard, like, and, like, the other thing is, like, with Luso, if you, like, to me, you could just cast a summon, then cast Luso. Like, you're not really saving CP by doing this.
Yeah.
So, you're not Lusoing on your opponent's turn. Maybe you could Belgemine on your opponent's turn, and, like, cast a summon, cast Chocobo Chick, cast a summon, and, like, they never had a chance to interact with the Belgemine before that goes off. But that's a lot of work for what the deck is already doing without running this weird brick in the deck, so...
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't particularly like it, though.
Yeah.
Thief, same part of the cycle of backups. They keep trying to make this Wind thing of, like, can't be blocked by a big forward. I think the only card I've ever cared about it on is Fire Winds Zidane. Like, other than that, like, it's just kind of irrelevant text most of the time.
Agreed. Yeah, not much else to say.
Speaking of Zidane, here's another one. Tantalus member Thief, backup, enters the field, look at your opponent's hand, they discard, you and then draw, so kind of like a Kate Sith. Tap them, sack them, remove 3 cards, your opponent breaks them from the game. To me, this reads as a 3 CP vanilla backup for the most part. Like, yeah, you get to curate your opponent's hand, get a little bit of hand knowledge. Later on, you could maybe use it to kind of cut your opponent off of some recursion. Does that really matter? Especially enough to lose the name Zidane that you could be doing anything else with? No.
I don't understand this card at all. Kate Sith came out 14 sets ago. It's cheaper, and it removes the card permanently. A lot of people always argued, well, Kate Sith's a bad card, though, because it just replaces. It's like, but at least if there was that, like, key threat in their hand, it was gone. This just discards it so they can get it back later. Like, I don't know. Maybe someone finally thought Zidane needed a power check, but I'm surprised how pedantic this is.
Yeah, I mean, like, in Kate Sith, if Kate Sith cost 3, no one would play Kate Sith.
Absolutely.
The main reason Kate Sith is good is because 2 CP backups are they're basic lands almost. Like they can't be bad almost by the nature of how a 2 CP backup works. The
you
moment
can get that turn 1, okay, I need to see what you're doing and just try to stop it.
Yeah, this guy, you can't play him turn 1, and if you play him turn 2, he doesn't draw a card to replace. Like if like both players drew a card, maybe, but like no, that's not how it works. So yeah, it's just kind of bad. So this, I think, is one of the most ridiculous cards in the set. So this is Sid Highwind, not a guy that traditionally gets good cards. I think, like, looking at like the list of like past Sid Highwind cards, a lot of them are like, look at your opponent's hand cards and then do nothing with them. Like that was like a thing he used to do in the early sets.
Daniel, I kid you not, when I read this, I almost immediately got on the phone with Hobby Japan. I was like, hello, are you aware you printed a Sid card, like, without any weird restrictions that's just generically good? Because I'm worried that someone there is, like, feeling sick. I couldn't believe that.
So 5 CP backup. When he enters the field, search for 2 Cat 7 forwards and add them to your hand. So this is like a Sarah FFL or a Cindy. I think those are the 2 big ones that do this, right? There might be another one I'm missing, but like, and then damage 5, you can tap them, stack them, and you just get to crap a category 7 forward to 5 or less out of your hand onto the field. Really strong damage 5 even, honestly.
Yeah.
He kind of just refunds himself at that point if you just have anything to play. So this is like the cheapest backup that does this by far, not even close, while being arguably a better category than some of the cards that do this. Like, Cat 7... They've never printed good Cat 7 cards before, and they're not going to print... The next set definitely doesn't have a Cat 7 card as the cover card of it or anything like that, you know? Like... I think I have said this line of text every single set review from about Opus 20 until now. But something else this does is this. It doesn't say different names. You could just search 2 copies of Yuffie with this. So, like, now if you're like a mid-range win deck, your game plan against aggro can be Resolve Sid Highwind, Resolve Yuffie, Yuffie special, which is a lot better than draw Yuffie, hope to find a Mina so you can Yuffie special. Like, you know, like, getting those 2 on 1 is so much better. And the card is independently, like, really playable. Like, I almost, like, when I first saw this, I thought I was missing something. Like, you know, different names, like, you know, does it have to be specific? No, it's just any 2 cats. And, like, think of some of the stuff you can line up. You can get, you know, you can get Yuffie and an Aerith even if you like the new Aerith. You could play, you know, 1 copy of Aerith in your deck now if you say, I want to go for lethal this turn, but I want to make sure that, like, I don't know, they have their Lena can't revive something during my combat phase or something, right? Or you can use the Sid Highwind to force that through. Like, the other one I think of that, like, does this is like the Earth Shantoto from Opus 14. It's like flip 5, add a wind, add an Earth card. Like, that card was fantastic. I think this card just has to be absurd. Like, yeah.
The fact that it can search 2 and it costs 5, whereas traditionally these effects like Cindy for 15 or Sarah FFL have cost 6. It feels like Opus 11 all over again, where the new FF game was coming out. I think Remake was coming out, and they like wanted to push it, so they pushed all the FF7 cards, especially Sid. And Sid has always been one of my favorite Final Fantasy 7 characters, but all of his cards have just been terrible, like mediocre at the absolute best. So I had the same reaction too when I read this. I was like, well, hold on. There's something missing here. Like, where is the part where it reveals, but it's Sid Highwind, so he's terrible. He's a smoker, so he's hurting himself. No, it's just generically good, and it's cheaper than the norm, and a great damage 5 effect. Like, I'm happy for my boy because I've always loved this character. I'm surprised this is as solid and straightforward and good as it is.
No, I legitimately think that, like, this card existing completely revitalizes the potential for Win to be a support engine for a mid-range deck again. And that has not been the case in ages. Like, it's been...
Because, I mean, you mentioned the Yuffie line. Before this, what we had the ZG, which you then had to break, and you said, no, Sid can just get you Yuffie in the special right away.
Yeah, or you would run, like... Usually what you would have to do in a deck playing Yuffie is you would have to run 3 big Yuffie, 1 small Yuffie of your choice, a Mina, and then, like, maybe a Stiltskin if you chose the 1 cost Yuffie from Opus 1. Like, you could just run, like, Sid, and, like, everything, it just lines up so much easier, and, like, don't get me wrong, I don't think Yuffie's the powerhouse she was, but she's, like, there's also now less writing on Yuffie because Sid makes it so much easier for, like, the Yuffie doesn't necessarily have to be timed as well because of, like, it changes everything. Like, it's so good. Like, I love this card. And that's the easy mode option. Like, you could also, like, you know, search up the new Barret or the new Cloud, and, like, it just, there's so many cool things this guy does. Being a 5 cost in Wind actually is kind of cool because of the wall that they printed in Opus 16, which is still a really interesting and powerful card, and Sid Highwind can help with that by getting a Yuffie who feeds it even further. Love this guy. So cool. Okay, we got to tone it down a little bit. We're getting a little hypey there for a bit. This is Sador. Job prints can be cool. That can matter. 5 cost 9k with warp. Can't be broken by abilities that don't deal damage. This is like not irrelevant, but it's not a breaking part of the card. When it enters the field, choose a card with warp in your break zone, add it to your hand. I don't think this is what the warp deck is really looking for. I will still say, once again, if you're going to print Draft Chaff, tacking warp makes it a lot more fun and limited. Like, if this guy just said, can't be chosen by abilities or can't be broken by abilities that don't do damage, and when he enters the field, choose a Cat 4 or something in your break zone, add it to your hand, wouldn't even be really that fun and limited. But because he has the warp, I think there's like the potential to kind of see this and see the Kurosame and kind of get, makes it a lot more fun there. So I'm happy to see that. I think this is like a better way of designing Draft Chaff, even if that's kind of furthering the thing that like the warp stuff is just the Draft Chaff and they just tack warp on to kind of make it more fun in that area.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's just Draft Chaff.
Chocobo, standard unit, Cat 7, form a party with the forwards of any element. And when Chocobo forms a party and is forming a party and dies, you can play a Chocobo of cost 2 or less, play it onto the field. I wouldn't consider myself a Chocobo expert, but this one doesn't read like one of the better Chocobos to me. Even of the party Chocobos, like this is...
It's poor. As someone who loved Chocobos, because that was the deck my girlfriend played when we first got into the game, like, if there's one regret, the only regret I have about Stern Leonis getting banned is it meant Chocobos. It's one time in the sun. Finally, the sun set on that. Just why? Why does it have to be in a party, but it's so weak itself, and then you can't get the Chocobo summon, you got to search for a specific Chocobo character, but there's no good Chocobo characters of 2 or less that you would want to play anyway. So
Chocolate exists.
Well, yeah, the backup. If you haven't already drawn her, then yes, you can get her and slap her onto the field. But
we're also talking now, like, if your opponent could just assign the damage to the forward and not to the Chocobo, like...
Exactly.
and you have a 1 CP...
Why is it so specific?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Moving along. 9, a Class 0 Cadet, Type 0 backup. 2 CP, so pretty generous floor. 1 and tap, choose an attacking Class 0 Cadet, gains 1,000 power in first strike. It's not like a terrible effect. It's not like a reason to play the card. I mean, the real reason to play this is there isn't like an ideal 9. So the legend for Opus 12, I think it was, right?
13.
13. Still a really strong card, right? But you got to play Fire for that. And I don't know that we really like outside of Deuce. I'm not like feeling a lot of the Fire Cadets. And the Lightning one, the forward, I think is like okay, but like if your opponent can't deal with it, it's really debilitating. But if they can deal with it, it feels really, really bad compared to like the Ace. It just isn't it's a very reactive card in a game that doesn't really want you to be reactive in that way a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a very decent chance you could just play this as I want a Win Cat 0 Cadet backup or Class 0 Cadet backup, and this pairs really well with the Ace from 21. Pairs really well with 8 from this set as like. I want to protect those forwards and make it really difficult to deal with, and if I attack and I have this 9 available, then they really can't do much with those.
Yeah. It's very good for combat. I do have a bone to pick with the action ability. There was a card that came out in Opus 6 called Kurosame, and he was a 2 CB backup that just said, dull him, choose a category 0, type 0 forward, gains 1,000 power. You could use that on your opponent's turn. This has to be a class cadet, and it has to be attacking. I understand it gives it first strike, but like those are 2 restrictions. I just don't like that there was 1 CP attached to this. We're in Opus 25 now. Like that would not have broken the game to just let him dull, choose a attacking 0 forward, and then give the 1K first strikes. That's my one complaint with him is he's needlessly overcosted on the ability.
Especially when you can't really use him defensively. But
yeah. Like, again, if you could use it defensively, I would get it a little more because it's like, oh man, you could have a really strong blocker, but like it only works on an attack. Just let me dull him. Why do I have to pay extra?
Yeah. I mean, regardless, I think the ability is fine enough. Like it's.
Yeah. I mean, you may just want him just as the job backup. You may not even care about the ability. So.
Barbarisha. So again, we've got a whole set of Archfiends this set. When she enters the field, choose an Archfiend other than Barbarisha, add it to your hand. She has the burst. When she enters the field, if you control a Golbez, deal 3k to all the forwards opponent controls. I love this card, actually. I really like it. It's funny, because I think in the deck that the LB Golbez is, I think this is worse than the Opus 13 one. Like I would,
Mm,
because you could play that one and maybe get like a really big cleave if you have a bunch of Archfiends kind of sitting around, right?
yeah.
And in that deck, I really don't think getting one back to hand does that much for you. And I don't really know what 3K does. You don't really have like a first striker or anything like that. Like 3K is just such a small cleave.
Yeah.
However, this is an Archfiend that draws a card, which is so much fun with the 19 Legend. Like you can now you have an Archfiend in your break zone. You remove the counter from Golbez. Golbez says play the Archfiend. You play this Barbarisha. You draw the card from the Golbez. Barbarisha says get back that Archfiend. Then you play the Vayne, and Vayne says remove the counter. You can play the Archfiend you just picked up. It's so cool. I don't know if it's competitive, but I will be playing the crap out of this deck at locals because to me, one of the biggest what ifs in Final Fantasy history is that Opus 19 Golbez. If they had if you could just send this back in time like Aku and Samurai Jack and
Good reference.
and do that I think that deck would have been really fun and really playable, and it's so difficult to play well too. There's a really good skill ceiling to it. Just
If only.
yeah, it's if
Yeah.
only. But and I'm still gonna be playing that deck. I'm still gonna be messing with it. I don't know that that's enough for that deck now, and I think for the current Golbez, I would play the other Barbarisha, but it's not even bad there. It still says get back and forward. There's a pretty good, even if she just does 3K and then blocks, she does kind of a 10K blocker too. That's maybe what you're supposed to do with her. But and Burst is always great.
Yeah, I would assume that second effect has to be with the Golbez, because if you just played that normally on your turn, and it's conditional, it doesn't even work without Golbez. I don't even know why that's there, but I don't think you really care because you're mainly going to be playing her for the EX burst and for that initial card refund, and the artwork is gorgeous, so I like it for those reasons.
Mandragora is 1 CP monster, activation cost of Wind and 2 to the end of the turn, becomes a forward with 5,000. When it deals damage to a forward, break it. When it's put from the field in the break zone, choose a forward, break it. There are some cute things you can do with this card. You could attack if your opponent really doesn't want to block it, and then you could still sack it with Witch, which still gets you a kill. It's not broken or anything, but it's cool. I could see a world where you do that. You play this, it's one cost, you can pull it in off of a realm and still get access to your Atomos, and then, you still have all the fun stuff with Witch. When it deals damage to a forward, break it. You can kind of do fun things there if you can give this the ability to ping as well. There's a couple cards that allow you to do that. That could be kind of fun. I don't know how relevant any of that is, and I think the activation cost is very high on this card.
Yeah.
But if it didn't have the first ability, it just said when it's put from the field in the break zone, break it. It had a 1 wind activation cost. I think it would be a lot better. But maybe the ability to say, hey, you're on damage 6, you got to block this guy. Well, cool, you blocked it. You'll dealt the damage. Now your thing dies. Then my thing dies, and I'm going to kill another forward. That could be really strong. It's a 2-for-1.
Yeah, that's what I saw it for, as a finisher. I like that it kind of has the little death touch text, and then it can hit something else. This was always one of my favorite hunts in 12, because you think, oh, it's just a bunch of little guys, and then they get really strong. But spending 3 to activate this, you better be sure you're getting forwards out of that. So if they just let it pass on by for 1 point of damage, that's going to feel bad. Or if they go, oh, okay, well, Brynhildr, it's gone. So if it's used, you said it, as a finisher, nope, you are now have to block this, so it's really going to pay off at that point.
Could be really cute with a Jack Garland. You make them have to block you. That could be fun. I don't know if that's a deck, but that could be fun. Yuffie. So we got a new Yuffie. 2 CP ninja. When she attacks, place a shuriken counter on her. When she's blocked, you pull all the shuriken counters off and you do 4,000 damage for each counter on her. So my initial read of this card was it's terrible.
Yeah.
I have actually reevaluated it a little bit. I think she's actually okay, sneakily good maybe. So there's a lot of different options for the other Yuffie to play with Yuffie. You have the Opus 1 cost. If you're playing Stiltskin, you should just play that one instead. You have the Opus 20 one, I want to say, where she gets 2 shurikens on entry, and then when she attacks, she can do 8k. Um, and then there's the one from, I think it was 23, where she's like a ninja payload. Like whenever a ninja deals damage
Yeah,
including yourself, you draw a card, and you can make her unblockable for 2. But none of those Yufis have haste.
true.
And haste is really good. Just inherently, if you like this, and something nice about having haste on Yuffie is if you're in a pinch and you have to cast this, haste gives it a reason to get it off the field at some point, right? Like it's going to be punching in,
Yeah,
and she does kind of trade up with everything. You know, like say she attacks, you put the counter on her, your opponent blocks her, she does 4k, then they block it, they take another 4k. Well, you just killed it. You just did 8k to that forward. Sure, the Yuffie dies, but like that's a pretty, that's a good trade, right? Your
yeah,
little 2CP idiot traded with like whatever their 8k is. And then you go a little further. Let's say that I commit the Yuffie and empty board, and I swing in, I get my point of damage, which is great. That's, a 2CP haster is not that bad for that. Well, now she's got a shuriken counter, so the next time she attacks, she gets a second counter. And now she blocks that 4CP 8k without dying. So I don't know, like, that doesn't sound that bad to me compared to have this one that sits here, and if it lives a turn, I can maybe ping something for 8k, or I'll drop this because I don't have any other choice, and maybe I'll draw a card off of it. Like, this one also just
yeah,
kind of does actually do something. Maybe it is a removal spell.
yeah. Yeah, I actually kind of like her as additional special fodder for the big 5 CP Yuffie that if, you run out of that card or you just need to find it, a card that can always hasten for that final point of damage is always worth looking at. And like you said, I think you're okay with her getting blocked and trading up to something because she only costs 2 anyway. So I can't imagine you're going to run her as like the front runner for ninjas or even in a 7 build. But again, hey, I have this new Sid Highwind now. I don't need to run Stiltskin to find extra copies of the Yuffie. Her being a backup to that Yuffie that, and if it all else fails, I've got this little haster. I think she'll go good there.
Yeah. So, good job, Yuffie. You glue up a lot in the last, 48 hours for me.
Indeed.
Another FF7 woman, we have Lucia, who is a soldier. 2 speed 5k. At the end of each of your turns, you activate all the job soldiers you control, and then you can dole 3 active job soldiers and draw a card. So, a lot going on here. First of all, Soldier in Wind is very weird. You tended to cheat your in off of Glenn, but again, you can't always count on resolving Glenn, given that he's very expensive. So I imagine you probably have to find an alternate way to really get her in if you want her to be the centerpiece of a deck. But both of these text boxes are absurd. Of note, that first ability does not say forward job soldiers. She activates backups. So if you have an Angeal or a Cloud backup or a Restrictor, those will all activate as well. That second effect does not have a once per turn clause on it.
Yeah.
If you can keep activating all of your characters and you can keep doing that, you can draw your entire damn deck.
Yeah.
And then she's going to activate them at the end of the turn to draw a card. Like the clearly intended combo is you play Glenn finds Lucia and Matt, and then craps them both onto the field. You dole all 3, you draw a card, Lucia activates them, and then you're available to use Matt's thing on their turn. It's kind of the intended gameplay loop of this deck. But she's honestly strong enough to maybe even see play outside of that. So, really interesting card, one to keep an eye on, I think.
If you can get a backup line full of soldiers, like you said, really the only weird part is just that she's in Wind, and I'm looking at them right now. There's no other soldiers in Wind, so maybe you just go for the Glen angle. I don't know where she fits, but she clearly has strong effects if you've got a soldier deck.
If you squint really closely, she kind of reads like Raphael.
Yeah, in a way.
So, we have our other Wind Legend in Rem. So we have when Rem enters the field, you can pay X. When you do, search for a class 0 cadet at cost X. Other than Rem, play it onto the field. You can tap her and sack her to activate all of the job 0 cadets you control. So, unequivocally, card is probably pretty decent. I'll let you talk about this a little bit more before I kind of go into my little spiel on it.
It is very underwhelming for a legend. When I first read it, I was like, okay, it's another Rem. And then I realized it was a legend. I was like, oh my god, this is a legend? Well, why? So the backup Rem has always been a really staple card. Not that it's amazing, but it's just a solid backup with an EX burst. Some people even like the little crystal version, but I've always liked the burst version that got you a card back. And this one's fine. It's very much giving me the Hope vibes from what was it, Opus 22 or 23, where he could pay for 13 stuff. But that one could repeat. Like if she's a legend, here's my issue with her action ability too. If she's a legend and she only works with job class 0 cadets, which is good, that's how you push a tribe. Why can't she just do that naturally? Why does she have to wait a whole turn? And then she can't attack. So she basically, what, you just want her to sit there waiting to activate them all? Like, I don't know. Like it's there's nothing wrong with the card. The text is fine, but I also feel very underwhelmed by it. Also, being a 3 CP means I don't really want to jam her out turn 1. Like if I'm trying to, oh, she can be a backup fixer, which is cool, except then I have to pay for her off curve. So I just if she was like 4 CP with higher stats or 2 CP and I could use her as a backup fixer, I think I'd really like her a lot better. But I have to admit I'm feeling very underwhelmed, and I wouldn't be surprised in a class 0 cadet deck if I'm like, I'd rather just play the backup one with the burst.
Yeah, it's one of those awkward situations where I will just straight up say I do like the card. I think it's definitely like it's cool. I like that we have a playable forward rem now. I think that like having a search for class 0 cadets is really powerful. Why can't she just search for the class 0 cadet and add it to hand?
Yeah.
Like we Pain was Opus 3, which was a burst, add Yuna or Riku, which effectively was the same thing as this. Like let's be totally real. And we can power creep that. It's okay. You can print good cards. Like I think of like all these pay X's, search your deck, play them to the field. And a lot of them, I think, come out worse than they read. Like, let's go backwards. Hope. Really have not been impressed by anything Hope ever really does. Like, he seems okay, but again, having that ask of not only when I enter the field do I need the extra resource investment, but like, if I don't resolve, you lose all of the investment that would be to play that character anyway. Like, it just says search. Like, it's the same thing as drawing it, putting it in your hand, but you must play it immediately, right?
Yes.
So then, okay, Hope was like, he's fine, but like, would I call him like one of the best cards of his set? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Angeal, I think it's a card I have
Angeal
tried
and
a
Soldiers,
lot. I've tried to make Angeal work so much. Like, 3 CP backup, play any soldier from your deck, but like, you really think, and you're like, man, I don't really know what I want to get off of this guy sometimes. Like, I want to play the Zac off him because he pairs so well with the Zac, but like the Zac costs 5, so I have to have 2 backups before then, and then like if you want Rem to play an even cost and odd costed character, you want 2 backups. So you go backup, tap, play Rem, backup, pitch, play, I don't know, 9 or something, or like Queen, right? Like that feels really bad in comparison.
I don't think they realize how expensive the pay X effect feels in reality. And again, it's a double win, so God help you if they then amot you after you've invested all that CP into whatever you're trying to get. Like, I don't know. I'm just not feeling it.
Like, I think the best of these has been Grahatia, but I'll also say, like, when I'm building Scions, I go, okay, 3 Alize, 6 Ishtola, 3 Estinian, the 1 Alfino forward, and then it's like, I'll hold off on Graha until I build the rest of the deck and see how much room I have for it, and if I have a standard unit for it. As strong as that effect reads of pull any Scion from your deck, I don't feel confident in playing him because the cost is so high. Yeah. And I really feel the same way here. Like, if that line of text was 3 CP EX person, Ram enters the field, search for a class 0 cadet, I would be over the moon about this card. She still probably wouldn't read as a legend to me on first read, but I'd say, like, sure, like, that's a wind EX burst that, like, can do stuff later on if she lives, and the burst is really powerful, but not having the burst, requiring the pay X on entry, all of this makes me kind of just have a bit of an iffy taste in my mouth around the card, and I don't really... Again, I don't think it's bad. I think, 3, pitch a card from hand, play 7 from deck is going to be a really strong play. But I just feel like she could have been better, and it wouldn't have been a problem.
She could have been. Look at the Lucia we just looked at. By that card existing, you activate all your soldiers for free every turn. This card has to destroy herself to do it, and she's a legend? Why? You have already restricted it. You've locked it into class 0. It doesn't need... Like, how does Lucia have better text than she does? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I haven't played Type 0. I'm assuming Rem dies, and that's why everything Rem does involves Rem
Yes,
dying.
you're correct. Yeah.
But like, also, she didn't have to die for that second effect. Like, she just said activate the class zero
Hmm.
cadets other than Rem. Then you now have a magnet your opponent really needs to get rid of, right?
Yeah,
Like, which is
absolutely.
like, yeah. I'll play her. I think she reads fine. I just would have liked them to have pushed her even further, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it for Wind, though. I do think it's a pretty decent set for Wind. Like I said, I do like Rem. I really like the Queen. I think the 9 is actually pretty solid. I really like the Cater. Like the cadets are all really good. And I think Sid is like transformative for Wind.
Yeah, Sid's great.
So now, here we are. We're getting into Earth. We have one of the hardest names to ever power creep in Ursula. So 2CP, Princess Monk. Congrats to Ursula on a promotion, by the way. A princess now.
Right?
Good for her. When Ursula enters the field, you can search for a monk or card name monk out of the hand. When she attacks, she forces a fight. I don't hate it. It is ironic that this is the best card that the old Ursula could have ever had as a best friend, and it's named Ursula. I don't really expect this to see any play. It just seems a little bit low octane to me. Like, you can play her with summons or abilities. Like, you can Fenrir her out. You can cheat her into play with the Yang. Like, there's a lot of things you can do. But the search pool is a little bit limited comparing to what it could have been for that type of effect. And the name is kind of rough. Like, there's just, like, enough that kind of makes you go, yeah, I'll go elsewhere. Like, the second effect is cool, but she's so small that, like, what is she intending to fight and win against?
Yeah.
Like, she just trades with the Laswell when she attacks. Like, she's going to lose a lot of fights. Maybe that's the Ursula lore. She just fights stuff that's bigger than her. She pulls, like, and, just blows up when she does it. But, like, the fact, like, that could have been a one-sided fight, maybe, and I would have liked it more, because then it's like, I'm going to do 5k, and then, like, maybe I can trade up then, the same way Yuffie could. But it's not a bad card. Like, it's cool.
For a game that prides itself on not having a rotation and that, oh, you can still play cards from Opus 1 in Opus 25. We're never rotating stuff out. It's so weird when they design these cards that clearly conflict with their previous version. That, like you said, this is what the other Ursula would love to pull back, but it can't because it's Ursula. Like, and she was restricted. It's only when she enters by summons or abilities. So you can't just play her outright. And then she's a 5k, so when she attacks, she basically guarantees to wipe herself out. Like, I don't think that's even optional, right? No, it says up to, so you could ignore it if she's
Oh, okay,
alone,
you could. Yeah.
but still, like, yeah, I just.
But even there, like,
And the old.
you got to power pump her, or she's going to die, probably, in that
Exactly.
trade.
And the older Ursula, it's not like anyone's playing monks anyway. So this was a chance. Okay, if you don't want us to play that old one anymore, give us a brand new updated engine. And this just feels very lacking.
Yeah. I don't hate the card still. Like, I think the card is fine, but I do think the name is really bad.
Yeah.
It's Homos. Let's go to the full art here, because, oh my goodness. So, before paying the cost, same text. Choose a forward, deal it 1,000 damage for each card in your break zone. So, it doesn't read terribly, right? The idea of pay 1 Earth, sack a backup, or pay 3 and kill a guy, there's only so much bad you can say about that. But Earth has a lot of these. These, like, under some conditions, pay 3, kill a thing. Titan,
Yeah.
if you can pay 3 with only Earth, does this with no hoops attached outside of the lack of cost reduction, right?
Yeah.
I also think back to, like, the 15 starter Titan that, like, you choose a forward in your break zone, root from the game, it deals so much damage. Like, that's a really small amount of setup, and even that card really has seen very little, like, very sparing play since then. I think of a card like Golem, which is like reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add a forward, do that much damage to a forward. Like, that card kind of draws a card back potentially. Like, again, it's random as well, but like, this is a lot of work. And the other problem is, this loses to Mist Dragon 3 different ways.
Yeah, right. Yeah. With every different line of text.
So the one they're going to do is they're going to rip your break zone out from under you and draw a card. But like every single mode of Mist Dragon cancels this summon as well, which is just a funny thing to laugh about, when you think about it. But
I think this needed another line of text to be playable. It either needed to draw a card. I mean, because it's already super conditional, right? You don't know how many cards you're going to have in your break zone at any given time. Or maybe it just needed to cost 1 at all times, and they gave the whole reduction to something else. Because, again, the more conditions you put on a card, well, the more then I need the payoff for it. So if you want me to pay 3 when I already have Titan that guarantees 9, this needs to hit more than 9. So I don't know. I'm not digging it. The art's great, though.
I do actually. Now that you think about it, like that would have been like a really cool if it's like if you remove the backup as well, choose a 4 in your breaks and add it to your hand. Like that would be kind of cool. Like add a 4 in your breaks into your hand. Like then you get like a weird like recursion effect. Like that I would have been really interested in seeing. But like
Yeah.
as it is, I'm just like worried that when you need the kill spell, you really need the kill spell, and you can't wait for you to like get a couple cards in the break zone to actually cast this.
Yeah.
Vincent, 2 CP gunslinger, has first strike 5k. When he attacks, he gains 4,000 power. You can pay 7 to make Vincent fight somebody. Reads like a really good limited card. Does not seem like a constructed playable card anywhere else.
Yeah, I actually really like him as a beater. I like that he essentially always attacks as a 9k first strike. I think they'll be really fun and limited. What is with that action ability? 7? 7. What is with Vincent in the number 7? Like, I don't recall that character being tied to, like, he's expensive or you gotta pay him. He's not Yojimbo. Like, I don't understand why so many of Vincent's effects are like, okay, if you pay your entire wallet, we'll let you do the same thing a Hecaton could do. Like, yeah. But I do love the beater aspect of him.
I think the idea, and I like this, is when you make a game designed for limited, you have to print overcosted removal at low rarity. Because you need to be able to interact with your opponent while you're both playing. And Vincent is going to be really, really good at that. You play him,
I suppose that's fair.
your opponent has to deal with them. If they don't deal with them, and you really have to get, I don't know, whatever bomb off your opponent's side of the field or lose the game, Vincent's going to have your back for it in limited.
Yeah.
So I do like that.
But do you like this next card?
Where at? 1 CP, Job Rat. Tap, discard Earth cards, same as all the other monsters. First effect, forward, gains 1,000 power. That would be kind of bad by itself. So clearly, we got to give it a second line of text to really, put it over the top. Choose a forward, give it 2,000 power until the end of the turn. Chef's kiss. The where at would be fitting in with Ratatouille over there.
Yeah.
Like.
I mean, there are so many Earth monsters that do the little power bump. The Earth. Okay, that's cute. Like in Opus 25, really? Did the same person design the monsters? Because it's hard to picture someone made Gimme Cat and then went to this thing, unless they were like, "Ooh, that one was too strong. I better tone the next one down."
The fact that Gimme Cat is in the same cycle as this, a whole card in your hand for 1,000
power. Not even brave. Like, what do we do?
And not only that, the card in hand is restricted.
Yeah.
You can't even discard like a not. You have to find an Earth card in your hand for it.
What do we do? I don't get it.
Okay. More interesting card.
Yeah.
We have Wall. 3 CP, Job Mobius, or category Mobius, Job Warrior of Light, and Monk.
Yeah.
Last time we had a Mobius card with Job Monk, it didn't go very well for the game.
Yeah.
So you move 3 cards and you break some from the game. You choose an Earth Forward you control, you dull it until the end of the turn, can't be broken. And then it has a really nuts special, by the way.
Yeah.
S, Earth. Reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, add 2 non-wall cards to hand, and put the rest into the break zone. That's not once per turn.
Yeah.
Which, like, the Mach 6 from, like, Opus 15, they felt the need with this almost exact same text, except worse.
Yeah.
They put a hard once per turn on that guy.
Yeah. He's Mobius. They love that category. I can't imagine you overstocking on walls that it's going to be a real issue that you hit another wall. Because even if you hit the single wall, okay, that's the one that goes to the break zone. You just scoop up the other 2. Like, yeah, that's a good special.
Yeah. Like, Okay, so let's kind of go bit by bit here. Warrior of Light, I don't think this is a
Good.
Refia card.
Yeah,
Refia
probably
does
not.
not play a lot of Earth forwards. You have like Warrior of Light, and like protecting Warrior of Light is cool, but like but three Earth cards. There's not that many Earth cards in Refia as well. You maybe like 20 in the deck total when you're done, all said and done. Really, probably
Hmm.
not going to go in that deck. Monks could be a good monk card. I'll leave it there. Remove three Earth cards when you break some from the game. Choose an Earth forward you control. Dull it, can't be broken. A lot of really interesting places for this. The first thing that comes to mind for me is Une. Um,
Yeah,
Une says, if I don't leave the field this turn, you probably are going to win this game. It is kind of expensive though, right? Like Titan does only cost like Titan summon costs only 2 CP, and that granted you're not
yeah.
developing the body, you're not doing a lot of other things, but like that is kind of relevant, right? I will also say it's really fun in like wind or water if you can activate the forward after it gains the ability to not be broken.
Yeah.
Like you get to do the Mira thing and just like say, "Well, I'm going to just stonewall. I will not die this combat phase."
Yeah. You got yourself a mini Arden.
Um, so I think the whole package is really strong. I could see this showing up in like an Earth Water like Chaos Arc deck to like protect your Unes and like himself alongside like a Siren. I could see this in Mono Earth, like protecting a Leo that becomes
Yeah,
huge,
I thought of
or
Leo.
you like pump like that deck plays Une as well a lot of the time. So you protect your Une, protect your Warrior of Light maybe if you really want to. Like just a really really interesting card, kind of a very different thing, and that special is absurd. Like one of the best specials I think in the game.
Like, I feel kind of bitter towards this guy just because of looking at Rem a few moments ago. So this guy, so he's overstated. He's a 3/8. It's just Earth cards. It's not like they have to be characters or summons or whatever. And it's any Earth forward. Like, why is this one so free and have so much going for him? And then you see something like the Rem, and you're just like, well, why is that one so restricted? So yeah, it's just all around good card. I'm not 100% sure where he goes. Maybe the mono Earth, but he's fun and basically has no downsides to him.
Yeah, and I think like the monk stuff maybe is a little bit harder to see, but like Ursula is still a really good card, and you can make Ursula
Yeah.
not be broken, which is really strong. I really even like the fighty Prish from Opus 17, and one of the weird things with that Prish is because she forces a fight when she attacks.
Yeah.
She kind of has this awkward thing where she's a 6K, and then she attacks, and she forces a fight, and you put like a blocker, and then she dies on the block. Well, this guy kind of says, well, actually, Prish gets to attack, and I don't actually care. Like you can't really block her profitably.
Yeah. I don't
Um,
know if you would have had enough Earth cards to make it work, but the retainer list you took to Winter Cup, like Noctis is such a key card to
oh
protect in that deck because you're
yes.
gonna win. So if this guy can just come in and say, nope, you don't get to touch Noctis, I'm just gonna protect him, like that's huge. And he
And
would trigger Noctis himself by playing him, like
and being a 3 CP 8K on top of that, so your relatively cheap cast like makes Noctis kill somebody.
yeah,
Man, like such a just a really cool card. Like I'm like excited
yeah.
for this guy.
What about the old Kata?
So cut edge the field, pay XX, basically pay 2 times whatever the number is. Pick a number, pay two
Yeah,
times it. When you do so, choose X dull forwards, break them, and then for Earth, one Earth becomes a forward with 8,000 power. Only use it once per turn. So I like both parts of this card, and I don't love either of them. Um, I still don't really understand why one of Earth's like color identity things revolves around breaking dull forwards. Earth can't dull
yeah,
forwards in any way. Like it doesn't. It's always had that. Like Earth, like
yeah.
lightning likes hitting active things, and Earth and Ice have to hit dull things. Like that just is like part of what they do. But just a weird thing there. If you squint 5 CP, kill a guy. That's like not a bad rate potentially. 7 CP, kill 2 guys. That's Shiva from last set. Again, pretty fine rate. You know, I really think they could have gotten away with saying 0 on the action ability. Like to be quite honest.
Yeah,
Um,
especially with how expensive the first one is. So hold on, I thought it was okay. I was getting knocked flashbacks from Opus 8. So you're not paying the cost, you're paying X based on how many you choose, correct?
yes,
So if you choose two dull forwards, you would pay two twice, which is four to break both of them.
yes. So 7 CP
Okay,
break
that's
2
a
dull
little,
forwards.
That's a little better than I thought. I thought it was like knock where you were picking one and then doubling up the cost. I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, that's terrible. But okay, that makes at least a little more sense.
Yeah. So again, like every bit of text on this card is okay, but it is not like really overwhelming. Like yes, like I want this guy in my deck, right?
Yeah. And Mono Earth has been such a strong deck these last couple sets. Like, what are you going to cut out of that to fit your cutter in? I don't think you need it.
I will say one thing it does have going for it: Earth's monsters are not good.
True. That is true.
Like the way we're at earlier kind of tells you what Earth
Yeah.
monsters are about and what they're doing. Like it's like zombie and a wasteland of really unplayable, miserable
Yeah.
forwards or like guys. So you might see some play based on that. Black belt, same as all the other standard unit backups. You can draw a card.
Yeah.
The other option, choose adult 4 to 7 or less and break it. It's just kind of good. Like,
Yeah.
if you want to draw the card, you draw the card. If it needs to be 3 CP kill a guy, it's 3 CP kill a guy.
Yep.
7k or less power is like actually a pretty good number. It means you can kill a Dol Refia, any Dol 3 CP4 just about. You can kill the Rem after it attacks. But yeah, just seems decent. Not too much to say about it. Speaking of decent, we have Kate Sith. 3 CP when Kate Sith enters the field, play a character of 2 or less from your hand to the field. Earth, tap sack, choose a Cat 7 in your break zone, add it to your hand. There's a lot of reasons to want Earth Cat 7 characters right now as well.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little deceptive, that first effect. Like, it's good because it can help you color fix and cheat stuff into play that you're not ready to play by your backups or the cards in hand or whatever else. But it is only the same card advantage as if it just said draw a card. You do need to kind of keep that in mind a bit. But, like, thinking of, like, the Edgar in Opus 21 and how good that card has been and how much play it's seen, like, I have to imagine this guy is, like, really, really good.
That's what I thought when I read this. I was like, oh, it's Edgar in Earth, just with a slightly different action effect. And we know he was good, so surely this will be good too.
Yeah. I do think that, like, Earth has less reasons to care about cheating stuff into play than Fire does.
Yeah.
But, like, and also Edgar being a king is really relevant. But
Also very true, yeah.
General. 5 CP EX Job Warrior does matter. So he has Brave. When he leaves the field, not put from field in the break zone, not anything else, choose a warrior in your break zone, add it to your hand. Can't be chosen by summons, and can't be dealt damage by summons. So, first off, the art is pretty metal. This is really cool art. We'll get the good out of the way with first. The bad, I don't really like any of the text on this card. Other than the burst in the right corner.
Matisky would always talk about how cards that their only effect is when they get banished or die or whatever have become less and less relevant as the game has gone on. And 5 is a lot to invest in something that's not going to do something right away. I guess they didn't want you to loop it with copies of himself, which is why they did that. If there's some way to abuse not having him go to the break zone, but like returning to your hand or flickering him on the field, then maybe there's something there. You can build a whole Renoa deck, but if you're building a Renoa deck, there's probably better things to be doing than this, right? So, like, cool. I love your description it being metal art, but unless there's some way to abuse this or break it, it just seems kind of eh.
I feel like if you could Renoa this, you could Renoa tie this and like actually have like an effect that wins the game, right? Like,
exactly.
And because he cost 5, he doesn't pair that well with Tyvis or Volker. Like, maybe off of the Volker trigger, but again, with the Volker trigger, you can play Tyvis. And Volker can color fix the Tyvis, so you can't even say, like, well, maybe you don't have the fire card to play the Tyvis. Like, no, by the way, Volker works. You will have a fire card in your hand. As it turns out. So, I could have even seen it say, like, when he enters or leaves the field, and I still would not know if I'd be high on this card.
Yeah.
So, and then Steve D said it the best. The second part with like the anti-summon stuff, that's just putting a hat on a hat. If you can't be chosen by it, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. I thought that's kind of funny and repetitive too. Someone was like, "Oh, but what about when Valifor comes back and they try to sweep him off the board?" we'll make sure he can't get hit by that either.
So, well, Valifor doesn't target and it doesn't do damage, so this guy does lose to Valifor. But they'll get the warrior back when you Valifor it, I guess. Yeah, just a weird one. Scarmiglione. So another one of our Archfiends. 1 CP with back attack. When it enters the field, choose a forward. Next damage dealt to it is reduced by 2 instead. If it's a Golbez, it gains this forward can't be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities. So, I will say in the Opus 19 Archfiends, you are not playing this guy because you're not intending to really have a Golbez, and timing that action ability really isn't a thing you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
But if the new Golbez LB deck is a thing, you need to have at least a copy of this card in your deck because you need to put the Fear of God in your opponent to not choose your Golbez.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to stop this. And something kind of fun we'll get to the Golbez is because Golbez is 1 plus the cost to play the Scarm, you could just discard a card in hand and just cancel anything that's targeting Golbez.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, every other version of Scarmiglione has been very offensive based, so it's kind of neat to see a protector version. This is something I would have liked to have seen more with like the Rubicante and such. So yeah, I'm glad. What did we talk about originally? Different angles and different ideas. So it's cool to see him kind of flip that. No, he's not coming in to get you. He's coming in to like protect himself or the others or Golbez. So
yeah, it's really important for Golbez. I think just about anywhere else. I think the starter Scarm from 17 still is a really good card.
Yeah.
And in beautiful full art. So here we have one of the most interesting commons, I think, of all time. So this is Sophie. Again, kind of one of those... Again, I haven't played Mobius, but I do have like a weird attachment to Sophie at this point. Like, I just kind of like all... I think every Sophie has been an interesting card, just about.
Yeah.
So 4
they
cost,
clearly like this character.
Yeah, so 4 cost from Mobius. Job Earthshaker. When she enters the field, you get to either play a Mobius forward of 3 or less from your hand to the field, or search for 2 Sophies and add them to your hand. And then she has a special, S, Dole, choose a forward, do 3k for each backup you control. So, I just kind of love every line of text on this card. For a common, she gets the Monk Sophie out of your deck, so you can't lose her to damage, which is already a big deal.
Yeah.
I think the first ability is also a really nice fallback. Even if, what you play like a Sarah Mobius, you play the Wall from this set, Maya. Yeah. There's so many interesting Mobius swords you can play. It's coming from hand. It's not crazy powerful, but it's probably that will come up and that will matter, right?
Yeah.
And I think the special is surprisingly relevant. And your opponent isn't going to want to kill this because you could just play another one and she's free if you get 2 Sophies. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how many Sophies you're playing in your deck. You play 3 copies of this, 1 copy of the Monk, and then do you play the Wind one? Do you play the Wild Rider one? I have no idea. But they kind of don't. They have to kill her because of the special, but they don't want to because you could just play the next one in your hand. So I really like that. She develops a threat, she gets stuff out of your deck, and she is a very free and solid body to play with.
I don't know where she goes, but this card gets a big thumbs up just for being different and unique. And specials is something I've always felt was very undercooked in this game. So it's nice to see a card like this that feeds itself with specials. And there's another card we'll talk about coming up later that kind of does that. And again, I like that. If you want me to go in on specials, give me the means to find and properly utilize those specials. So yeah, I like her.
Also love the art too.
Yeah, she looks very striking and fierce battling that storm. So
up next we have a soldier candidate. Brave, if you have a soldier candidate, it's a 7k, and then when it attacks, all your soldier candidates gain another 1,000. Not by itself exceptionally powerful or anything, but
yeah,
it is really cool that this pairs with the previous Earth Soldier candidate, which is actually a really a card that has more potential than most standard units do.
Yeah.
Dine, first Dine ever, actually, kind of a fun one. 5 CP, Job Outlaw. When he enters the field, choose a forward. If you have 5 or more backups, then he starts a fight with that forward. And then for damage 3, he gains 1,000 power. We talked about King, how 5 CP removal isn't really, like, especially like this late. It's like, does it really matter that much? But he's a common, and it's very neat art. I love that this pairs with a different card that we'll get to later. Yeah, not too much to say. It's not, game changing. It'll be a nice card in limited potentially if you can kind of get to that late game.
I like him a little less than King just because he has the potential to knock himself out when he does his effect, but hopefully he'll survive it being a big Earth body.
Up next we have Tifa. So Avalanche Operative, 4 cost, 8k. Beginning of your attack phase during each of your turns, you choose a forward. You do it 3k for each Cat 7 forward that entered the field this turn, and then when she attacks, all the Cat 7 forwards gain 2,000 power until the end of your turn. So, I think there is a world where an effect like this could be good and could be powerful. Mm-hmm. I think the example that I gave when this card was revealed was like, if Cat 7 had a lock, where like every time you play a Cat 7 character, you draw a card.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I'm not paying 4 for this, and then also having to pay for another Cat. It really feels like between this and the Vincent, they think it's a lot easier to spam Cat 7 forwards than it actually is.
Yeah.
Like, if it said, like, also worked for Cat 7 backups, like, I could, like, squint and see it, maybe. Or, like, if it was 5k per Cat 7 forward, and, like, she could kill, like, something small by herself the first turn and kind of pose a continued threat, maybe. But it's funny, because I don't even think Tifa is that contested of a name. Like, there's a lot of Tifas, and there's not
this
like
is only her 13th card.
Yeah, and like
it's actually kind of low for a 7 character.
and one this popular too, like
yeah.
So yeah, I really don't see it with this one over the hero from 14 or like the legend from was it 21? I think is a really fun kind of like
the one that can attack a bunch of times.
Yeah, like that one's kind of like a fun like build around that maybe you could try to pull off potentially. I really don't even see that with this card. If the Vincent Warp, like the Warp Vincent's ever good, maybe this is the card that like also like doubles up on the Vincent stuff. But again, like how realistic is that to actually matter? I really don't know.
Yeah, the 14 one still seems to be kind of the premier effect. Tifa's interesting that she always gets very different effects. Like, I'm not quite sure why all of her effects always feel so different. But yeah, this one, if it was just a start of attack phase, count up your 7 characters and blast something, I think that'd be really strong. But the fact that it had to have entered this field specifically this turn, it's just, I don't know, that just feels like such a weird, needless restriction.
Yeah, you're right. Even if it was just 3k for each Cat 7 forward you control, I'd actually be on board potentially.
Yeah, you'd still need a board of 3 of them to take out anything over 6,000 power, like...
Yeah, or if it was like 2k for each character you have or something, right? And
yeah,
like she becomes a removal engine. Like we have like Formelda, Formelda is great.
Yeah,
like I feel like we can push this a little better than this.
Yeah.
So up next we have Barrett, one of the best arts in the set. This card looks so cool. They pulled it on the stream as well. That like red in the sky is. Oh man, it's gonna be so good in foil. So 6 CP Brave. When he enters the field, you can search for a Marlene or Avalanche Operative of 4 or less, play it to the field. And then at the beginning of the attack phase, you can choose a forward. If you have 7 or more Cat 7 characters, you do it 9,000 damage. I'll let you start on this one, because I have some differing thoughts, I imagine, from what you're going to say on it.
Yeah, so when I first saw him, of course, the immediate thing I thought is like, okay, well, what's the most relevant Barrett we have? And again, it goes back to the Opus 14 Avalanche deck, but that deck hasn't really seen play in a long time. So this one's pretty much doing something different. It still wants a bunch of Cat 7 characters, but it's not doing like the Swarm super cheap thing that old Avalanche one did. I need to look up to see which Avalanche operatives there are. I don't know if we've gotten other like Jesse Wedge Big since then. So if it's still playing those old ones, or maybe you're just going for the old Opus 8 Marlene, then I don't know. Would it be better to play those? Like similar to what I just said about the Tifa, I like his attack phase effect. I like that he gives this reward for assembling the 7 crew, and 9,000's a lot. That essentially says remove something at the start of every attack phase. But as the game gets faster and cheaper, cards like this are also more and more expensive. So, yeah, like he clearly has a big payoff if you can get there. I don't know if this is worth investing in or not, though.
If we're talking about investing, I'm going to say I'm buying this card. I actually think this card's really good.
Ooh,
So there's a lot of things that I think people might forget when they first read this card. So that second effect, I think you can mostly kind of say, like, if I get to that point, that's great. But I think the first effect needs to be good. So we have the
yeah,
Jesse. So this guy, he can also just cost 5, which I think is huge.
true. That's a good point.
And I think people don't realize how many Avalanche operative backups there are that are, like, pretty playable, like, independently. So we talked about
Yeah.
Marlene. Marlene gets back. It's Cloud, Barrett, or Tifa's, I want to say.
Or Aerith, I think. Let me double check Marlene. Marlene. Oh, she's not an Avalanche operative. Okay, you keep going. I'll look her up.
Yeah, but like 4 CP backup with a burst that draws a card. So now Barrett costs 5, gets that, draws a card. You have this big 9K Brave thing. He's an Earth character that costs 6. We have a very relevant card right now called Emmett Selk that
True.
can pair with this really, really nicely. I Other Avalanche operatives. So we talked about Jesse. Polk is effectively another copy of Marlene. You can get back another copy of Barrett from the break
Yeah.
zone or anything else. You have Wedge, which can search for a copy of Barrett from deck to kind of deck thin, or you can search for like another Tifa forward or something like that to kind of again start to get those Avalanche operatives in rotation for Barrett. You can play Elfie, which does hurt a little bit because Elfie, you're only cheating 2 CP, but that gets you a fire card and your backups, so he can help color fix. You can then discard, search for another Avalanche operative of any color. You can get a Jige if you wanted to play Wind. You can get the Jesse to make your next Cloud or Barrett cheaper. You can get Polk and get a 3 CP backup off of that. There's a
Good
lot
old
of.
Billy Bob.
You could play Billy Bob, and that develops a second forward. You're in Earth, so it's not unlikely to have Tyro if you wanted to play Billy Bob as off color. I think that like playing like a splash of lightning for Zack as well in this hypothetical FF7 character deck is really really good as well. Like at the end of the day, you're kind of just playing the best backup of this of this type from your deck, and just sticking a big 9 CP Brave forward on the field next to it at the same time for free a lot of the time, right?
Yeah. Marlene, by the way, is Aerith, Cloud, Tifa, or Barrett, and that's still the only Marlene we've ever gotten. Was the Opus 8 one?
Yeah, I totally expected to get like a new art for her in this set.
Yeah.
Very weird non-include, but I imagine probably next set we'll get a Marlene then, probably given the cover. But yeah, I like just seems like a really good value card in general, and then sets you up. Now your clouds are good, and you can just kind of play like a mid-range Earth Fire deck that just happens to be doing things over time.
Yeah.
Up next, we have Riku in Earth for the second time. Gull Wings and Warrior, which is like why, but okay. Um, when she hits the field, play a backup of cost 3 or less from your hand onto the field, which is really really good. When a backup enters your field, all the Captain forwards gain 2,000 power and Brave. That one's like, it's fine. It exists. It'll matter. It's not important. Like I like her. I think she's cool. I am not looking forward to playing against Warriors. I think she helps that deck quite a bit, actually. The only question I have on this card is if you're playing Riku off of your Tyvis, you're not playing Mog and you're not floodgating as much. Which
Yeah.
maybe that's a healthier direction anyway. Like, say, okay, Tyvis is going to play 2 forwards, and then one of the forwards is going to develop a backup instead of, this obnoxious floodgate effect. So, yeah, I like her. I think she's cool.
Daniel, I will never understand this game because when I read this Riku text, I couldn't believe how straightforward it was. Enters field, any backup of 3 or less. No restrictions, no got to be category 10s, got to be Earth. Like, it's just so weird. Some cards like get restricted to the moon, and they're not even good without restrictions. And then you get cards like this. It's just why, and it's a warrior, so yeah, just like she's just generically good. Like I said, I don't know if the second effect's ever really going to matter, but just any backup. Just any backup. Okay. All right. As you wish. I will do your bidding. Yeah, it's good.
I like effects that encourage people to play backups, so I will
Me
take
too.
them.
I do like those.
My spoiler. If you want to hear about this, go watch my spoiler video. But I think the card's decent. Like it's It's effectively an AFMAO. Get a character of cost 2 or
Yeah.
less in the top 5 of your deck. I think it does matter for, like I said, I've messed around a lot with a Siren Rydia deck, where you need a lot of like 4 backups to get Rydia up to 4 counters, and this card might actually end up in that deck, honestly.
Hmm.
So, cool card. And that is it for Earth. So, definitely a really interesting set of cards.
Yeah, some fun ones in there.
So, yeah, don't go anywhere. In the probably the day after this, we'll have up with our Lightning and our Water, and then we'll finish out with the Light, Dark, and LB. So don't go anywhere. Thanks for watching.
Hulu.